Hello everyone, and welcome to TurnOfFrase. My name's Fraser, and today we're going to be talking about a subject that I'm sure everyone has an opinion on, and that is languages. Whether you love them or hate them, languages have always played a vital role in shaping who we are. When I first started learning French in school, I often heard the question, what's the point of learning this? Granted, the thought of being trapped in a room for an hour listening to children butcher French would drive anyone to insanity.
Bonjour, ya beau baguette.
French is such a beautiful language. But I digress. As I grew older, I started to notice how easily the idea of learning a second language was dismissed by so many people. Whether it be because a language didn't have enough speakers, they had never heard of it, or maybe it just sounded too weird to them, there was always some kind of reason that they kept gravitating towards. By now, you've probably seen a whole host of videos talking about this subject. From health reasons to travel, the benefits of language learning have been covered in great lengths. So instead, today I'll be discussing my own experiences with language learning and how it's impacted my own life. So without further ado, let's get into it. If you haven't already guessed by my accent, I come from Scotland. While English is our main language, we also have two other native languages, Scots and Scottish Gaelic. However, due to historical reasons, these are minority languages. Yet, despite this, Scottish Gaelic would be one of my first exposures to another language, albeit by chance, as while flicking through the TV many years ago, my family came across an episode of a children's show called Postman Pat. The show was, as far as I remember, more or less the same. It was still about a postman called Pat, who drove around with a black cat posting letters when he could be bothered. Oh, God bless the Royal Mail. Of course, it wasn't until I asked further that I realised the show was in Gaelic, and after a few fleeting seconds of being curious, the channel was swiftly changed. Unfortunately, my experiences with Gaelic never really went beyond curiosity at that point, and it wouldn't be until much later when I was in school when my true language learning exposure would begin. For those of you who live outside of Scotland, let me explain something really quickly. Our education system is divided into two parts, primary and secondary. Primary school is mainly for children aged 5 to 11 years old, where the only major concerns at the time were who had the best Pokemon cards, while secondary school was for kids aged 11 to 17 years old, with, let's just say, its own set of problems. But we'll get to that. The way language learning worked at my school involved the entire class being separated into two groups, French and German. I, of course, was stuck in the French class, and I've got to admit, I really enjoyed it at the time. The lessons were easy and fun, the vocabulary was memorable, and for all it was worth, I was heavily invested in it. At least until secondary school swooped in and stomped all over those hopes and dreams. Secondary school is an entirely different beast altogether. Gone were the energetic and fun days of primary school, only to be replaced by a mountain of subjects inside a building I'm pretty sure was falling apart. Regardless, as the years went on, French just became another subject that I had to get by in, and by the time I reached my fourth year, I managed to scrape by with a passing grade. It was then I decided to take a higher level class, which, for those of you who don't know, is the second highest level that you can take in high school. I had a great teacher, and again, the lessons were interesting, but combined with the many pressures of life at the time and other subjects, I failed. And with that failure came a great sense of shame. This wasn't like a film. I couldn't sing away my issues or twirl a baguette in some kind of weird montage. Probably because I would have eaten the baguette, but that's not the point. I became one of those people who surrendered himself to the notion that I was probably now officially part of the not good at languages group. And with that, I shut the door on that part of my life. At least, for a while. It had been 5 years since I decided to learn another language. as I went through university without giving it so much as a second thought. It wasn't until one night when I was thinking about my future that I wondered what I wanted to do with my life. And strangely enough, the idea of learning another language again swirled into my mind. And with that, I decided to rekindle my old French flame. Well, it did introduce me to some amazing singers like Stromae and Indelia. I didn't feel like I had the same investment in it as I once did. It was during this time as well that I decided to try my hand at being a primary school teacher. But to cut a long story short, that didn't work out too well either. So, a fun fact about that. When you train to become a primary teacher, you're required to go to classes for every subject you could possibly teach. From science to maths, everything was covered. However, during our language learning classes, we were told that schools these days would only really teach Spanish or French. This put my mind at ease, as the classes only really focused on teaching us the basics of these languages, like how to say listen or sit down. Unfortunately for me, when I walked into my first school placement, I was met with a sea of German words, which were brazenly plastered all over the walls. Merde. So again, French and I soon became estranged. Of course, during the breakup I let her keep the conjugations and all of our grammatical exceptions, while again I was left with this sense of guilt of feeling useless in a language. Along with other things going on at the time, I felt as if I would never reach a point where I was content with learning a language. At least, not until I discovered another language in what was quite possibly one of the weirdest ways possible. One night, while visiting a friend, I was explaining a bit of class I'd once done in university involving religion in Japan and the involvement of the Portuguese. One thing led to another, and then Wikipedia was soon brought into the debate, leading us down a rabbit hole of links until we came across one language of interest, Esperanto. Now, I'm sure it's probably a meme at this point, but for all of those who are unaware, Esperanto is a constructed language that was created in 1887 by a Polish doctor called L.L. Zamenhof, who wanted to bridge the gaps between groups within his own community. Coupled by its interesting history and, of course, timely introduction into Duolingo, we spent the night reading about it and learning even some basic phrases like Saluton, Kiel vi fartas, and so on. Once again, I felt that spark, that passion, but of course, events in my life got in the way, and I started to drift away from it. It didn't help that when I tried to explain Esperanto, people looked at me like I'd spat in their tea and then eaten all their biscuits. International lingua? It was not. So from there I had a turning point. I wanted to learn a language so badly, and yet they all kept slipping away from me. So I made a choice. Go big or go home. And boy, did I go big. I set my eyes on one of the biggest languages I could find, that of course being Chinese Mandarin. It was there I began studying religiously and learning more than just simple phrases like Ni hao and Wo de zhongwen bu hao. It became a gateway to a culture which I knew little about beforehand. Soon I was speaking to native speakers online, becoming enamoured by the culture and history to the extent where a year later I found myself standing in a rural Chinese city. But of course, that is a story for another video. I eventually took a break from studying Chinese and instead focused my other efforts on other languages. The main one now being Spanish. However, that's not to say that I'm a one language guy. Throughout the years, I've dabbled in many languages beyond the likely suspects, from Gallego to Gaelic, Indonesian to Arabic, and even Esperanto once more. While I'm far from fluent in any of them, I would love to return to them one day just to improve myself and, hopefully in turn, learn more about the cultures that they come from. By being able to look at them, I've managed to learn so much more than I thought was possible. As you can tell by the last several minutes of my rambling, my language learning journey isn't as streamlined as other people's may be. I never signed up to any extra classes, nor did I stick religiously to one language at a time when I probably should have. Yet, that's what's made this journey that much more fun. Years before I got back into language learning, I remember once talking with someone and explaining how I wanted to learn another language. I told them about Esperanto, and they laughed it off, saying how useless it would be to learn it. I then suggested Chinese because it was spoken by so many people. And they said that China was so far away, so why waste the time learning it? Well then, what about Spanish? I said. To which the person replied that it didn't sound as nice as French. Yeah, you can probably guess why I'm not really eager to share this hobby very often. The point of that story is to tell you that some people may bring down your desire to pursue learning another language, maybe because they just don't like it in the first place, and they'll use any excuse to justify it. From difficulty to accessibility, there'll always be an excuse for why someone shouldn't learn a language. But what they usually miss is the fact that learning another language can open up so many doors for other people. And it doesn't have to be for one reason. So you want to learn Korean because your favourite dramas are set there? Go ahead. Love Star Trek and have a lot of honour to spare? Then feel free to cling on your heart out. Language learning is a personal thing, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. You don't have to be a child to pick up a language, nor do you have to pay hundreds for a class to learn a language. All you really need is a reason to learn, no matter how small, and who knows where it will lead you. As cliche as it sounds, it is more of a stroll than it is a race. I started my journey with the thought that I would never really amount to much with languages, and now I can't wait to see where the next adventure will take me. Who knows? Maybe next year I'll be at the other end of the globe. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I will see you all next time.